you gonna get free this time? Falling into a blue sky mind. Came to me and that's all.
Here we are again, stretching into another conversation with Crystal and I. Yes, all of us together, cozying up to the elephant today and stretching into the space, stretching into our body. Today is about the stretch, folks.
All about the stretch.
It's all about the stretch. How do you stretch? What is the stretch? What does it mean to stretch?
When not to stretch, that's my thing. I'm like, how can I
When
get
can
out of
I
this?
when can I stop stretching?
Deb's inviting me to stretch, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to go. Maybe I'm doing something else.
That's
Call me
right.
later.
I think I'm gonna curl up into a little fetal position.
Where it's warm and cozy.
It's where it's warm and
Put me
cozy.
back in the womb. Oh,
That's right. And all of a sudden, like you just feel this little tap, 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 and you look up, and like there's a little trunk. The elephant's like, "Hey, Crystal, it's time to wake up and stretch, dear."
and then there's some days where that trunk has to fill up with water and like waterboard me. It's like, get the back up.
That reminds me of my dad when I wouldn't wake up in my teen years when I was like, I'm not getting earlier than 10.
hmm
And he would come in really like, oh, way too energetic, way too loud. And he'd be like, okay, get up. And I'd be like, oh, and I just pull the covers over my head. And he'd leave me alone for a bit. He's like, okay, you got 5 minutes. Then he'd come back. And I'd be like, please don't come back. Please don't come back.
You've fallen back
And
asleep.
yeah, oh yeah. And then I hear him again. I'm like, oh God, just go away. And he would pull down my blankets and he would say, okay, it's time to get up. And he would do a air trumpet and he'd be like,
Mhm.
and he wouldn't stop. He'd be like, and I'd be like,
Oh
this
my
is hell. And even after all of that air trumpet, he would leave kindly enough and I would pull the blankets. And then the next time he'd come in, he'd take my blankets and he'd rip them completely off my bed. And I was like, oh my God, I felt like a bug that just like was hiding beautifully under a log. And all of a sudden someone moves the log and the bug's like, ugh.
Yeah.
And then, and if sometimes I would even hold out that resistance and I'm like, I'm not getting up, he would come in for the last time and I would hear, he'd be quiet. And I was like, what's going on? I'd like peek open one eye and there's a glass of water, like just about to be poured completely over my head. So that got me into the stretch.
Indeed. You got
So be
stretched
careful.
out
I
on
have
the
those
blanket.
tactics and I'm happy to come over
That's true.
and and air trumpet you and get a glass of water. So
Little spray
blankets
bottle.
do not scare me,
Preferably
darling.
misted, please. Come mist me.
That's right.
Some lavender rose
Well, that's a
water.
perfect parlay into this
Oh, yeah.
conversation. Is just like, how can we mist into stretch? How can we consciously move into stretch? And stretch, just even by definition, is it's creating more space. It's taking something and wanting to elongate it to create more expansion in between and what you have known prior.
Mhm.
And part of that too is that you don't create injury. You want to stretch into something that is sustainable, that can continue to built upon, like accumulate,
Mhm.
right, in our stretching. As per usual in our human nature, there's this dichotomy of, I want to be seen, I want to be heard. And we're like, I'm afraid to be seen, I'm afraid to be heard. I think that's where the imposter syndrome comes in. We speak a lot of speak.
We speak about a speak.
We speak a lot of speak. We say a lot of things. And yet there are these parts in us that the very thing we want is the very thing we fear. And that very piece, I believe, are essential ingredients to really understanding consciously stretching. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But just even to take a real simple example is we've all heard before we exercise, before we go out on a run, make sure you stretch before so you don't injure yourself, right? You want to create more space and more flexibility in your muscles so that you can take the action in your life that you want, right? You can, in this case, it's a run.
Mhm.
And, or maybe you haven't done yoga. You haven't practiced
Mm,
yoga in a while, right?
that's
And you're
me.
like, oh my God, I love yoga so much. It's just so heart opening. La, 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 la. And then you're like, oh, it was so incredible. I was like off in the lands of Thailand when I was in my stretching in my
Felt so
practice.
good in the moment, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah, and then,
I
like, the
can't get
next 2
out of
days, you're
bed.
like, "Yeah, right, I can't get out of bed. I don't I need to be waterboarded, not not misted, because 'cause I'm not getting up." Because you're sore is all get out, right? Maybe you overstretched the moment, but the desire, the excitement brought you into it. So there is an interesting experience of awareness that we wanna have when we're stretching any aspect of ourselves. And that is to go back to stretching a muscle. We want to be conscious or present about how we're entering into our desire, how we're entering into our stretch. So if you're thinking about 10 other things before you go on your run and you decide, okay, I got to stretch and I do this quick thing. And how many of us have had, I just did this one little thing, I just
Yep.
twisted wrong. And we go, oh my God, everything just tightened right up. And we're often really freaking confused about that. We're like, well, I don't even know
You're
what
like,
I
"How'd that
did.
happen? Why am I in so
Right.
much pain? All I did was this simple little thing that was
Yeah.
not
Simple little stretch.
That's right, little stretch, just a little twist. I just turned to shut that door, and I've thrown my back out of the
Yeah, right. I just threw it right out the trash. Threw my back out.
right out the
Threw
window.
when people have said that over the years to me, like, "I threw my back out." I'm like, "Where did it go? Let's go find
You're
it." You
like,
have to
"Yep, it's not here. I'm palpating now, and we don't have a back to work on. I'm gonna go poke your ass
Your
instead."
back has left the building. There's metaphor after metaphor here of life, and so this week, stretch came up in many ways, and I had this one person come in, and she is somewhat recently retired, and one of the things when she first retired was really just stretching into who am I when I don't have this purpose and this way that I focus my energy of my life? How can I give myself permission to, in her case, have more fun? Just know that I can have fun and I don't have to be feel guilty about it or that I'm not useful in some way. And so she's been nurturing that. So she came in and she said, I just had like 3.5 days of complete fun. I kept saying yes to everything. And I went here. And then she was just explaining all these places she went and things she did and the fun that she had. And she said, it's interesting. I woke up today and I just feel really frustrated and a little down. And I said, well, that kind of makes sense, right? And she kind of looked at me initially like, what, huh? Can you say more, please? I get that a lot.
She's like, "I feel like I should say yes, but I
Yeah,
don't know
that's
why. Can you add more words, please?"
yes. Can you fill that in? Say more, please. So the say more part is why I said that was that when we stretch, if everybody takes their hands and puts it palm to palm right now, and just put about an inch between your palms. And I want you to imagine that you're pushing like on the other sides of your hands, like you're pushing against something, right? There's something, and you're just really like an isometric kind of thing. You're stretching slowly under tension, your hands apart. So you're creating more space. So if I'm pushing and stretching my hands apart, there's more space now between my palms. And if you feel like in this case, we're doing like an isometric, so we're imagining that we're pushing it against something, where do you feel where do you feel the energy?
I feel like I'm holding a ball of energy, but I can
Mhm.
feel almost like resistance on the back sides of each one of my hands. I feel juicy energy space and percolating in the middle, and then I feel like I'm wearing clothing on the outside of my hands that's getting
Mm.
tighter.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. So just check in with yourself, those of you that are doing that, and just see what you feel. And does that feel similar to what Crystal was just mentioning? When we stretch, we're stretching into two different directions, because we're stretching into the space, which is really the probability or the potentiality of what we can stretch into. It
Mm.
really is matched with what our desires are. And we'll also going to share about that. So, like in this case with this woman, she stretched into her fun, her experience of funning. And what happened is she stretched into that. And when you stretch into fun, you stretch in one direction into whatever that is. And you simultaneously are stretching from that place that has not allowed, in her case, to experience fun, to feel like fun is valuable to have. And so when you expand into that energy of something new, you feel the tension of that because it is a new space that you're moving into. So you're feeling those places that prevented you from being in that space in the first place. What we're saying is that intrinsic to stretching is that you're going to feel the expansion piece of the stretch, the potentiality of like really enjoying that yoga class, or like this person did. She was like, I had so much fun. And you're also going to feel the dogs barking, which is perfect timing, because the other part of the stretch is waking up, stretching into what you desire. It's like shining this bright light into the crevices and into the container that was holding back that desire in the first place. So expect, what we're saying is that when you feel a stretch in your life, that you're going to at some point feel some of the tender edges of that. I'll give you another example. I felt like stretch was part of the whole conversation this week. This woman comes in and she just looks amazing. I'm not kidding. Like, she's glowing and she looks like there's an energy, vitality, freedom. There's like a sensuality to her look. There's literally like this glowing around her. And I said, hello. And she's like, I'm a mess. And I was like, well, I got to tell you, you are a beautiful mess. What is happening? She's like, I just restrict love, and I can see how much I like protect myself from love and all this stuff. Now, let me give you a little background. This woman currently is being obliterated by love in the best way, in this connection with another soul. And so this is a perfect example of stretching in love. She's literally looking free and open and just like incredibly vivacious and wonderful. And she's literally feeling every part. In her mind, she's thinking, I am restricting love.
Mm-hmm.
In her body, she's feeling that. Why? Because she is stretching so much, not with her mind, actually, but with her beingness. And love is literally going in there. Love is literally the number one stretcher.
Mm.
It is the stretch, like premium stretch. Love is it. And love is going in all the nooks and crannies, and it's taking like the love floodlight, and it's literally lighting up all the crevices that she's had that have contracted or hardened around receiving love, experiencing love, because of the fear of losing love. So what we do is we don't even love in the first place. And so here she is in this expanded stretch moment, feeling that other side,
Mm-hmm.
that dichotomy piece that goes, oh my God, I'm so contracted. And I've said this to people a lot, in that when they will first start feeling their body more under care, and they become more aware of what they're feeling and their sensations, and they're like, I don't know, I just really feel resistant and and I will say the same thing. I'm like, fantastic. You wouldn't even have felt that if you hadn't actually moved into a broader awareness, aka stretch or expansion. And that what happens in a very one-sided monochrome monocrop world is we're like, well, I want to expand into my spirituality. I want to expand into my art. And I'm being a little bit of a jackass the way I'm talking right now. But I want
Moving
to
your
expand.
arms.
Yeah, I know. I wish you could all see me. I just want to expand. I want to expand into the cosmic divine flow of all creation. And then we feel as we do that, all of those nicks and crannies that just get floodlit up. And we're like, ah,
I take it
no,
back. I don't
it's
wanna do it
not
any
working. Right. Or we think it's not working. We're like, it's not working.
longer.
I'm broken.
Or it's just like it's fleeting, right? So you grasp the aha moment, the love moment, the spiritual moment, but because you feel the other thing, it's almost like, "Oh gosh, how did I just get slingshot back into the opposite of what I had?" Not really imagining or even understanding. And I just recently heard this, that like the way that our brain works is that we're like wired to pick up on the negative more than we are the positive, because the negative could potentially lead to harm. So it's
Mm.
like, of course, we're gonna, like, kinda notice this, but just having the awareness that that's the way our brain works goes, "Oh, okay. This is just, like, a little red flag. It's not the whole story. I'm actually experiencing all of it." So
Right,
and I
and
lo
it can't
and
just happen from our brain, right?
that's right.
That's how we totally, like, evolutionarily, I think is probably what they're saying, is that survival mechanism, which is only one part of our brain, by the way. It's just the
Mhm.
reptilian part. So, and so I'll add to that, and this is I'm glad you brought this up. We have so many other parts of our brain, first of all, than just the reptilian part. The reptilian part is essential and needed, and it is for survival. So it will look at where are the dangers, is what you're saying. And the cultural narrative puts us there. So
Yes.
there's so much experiencing that's happening out in our worlds that kind of cozy us up more in our reptilian brain. What we're saying is that stretching is human nature. If you have even an inkling of a desire to grow and expand in just who you are as a human being while you are in this body, then stretch is an intrinsic part of that. And then the intrinsic, I feel like I'm drunk, intrinsic nature. The
You've
intrinsic,
stretched. You've
I'm
had quite a bit of stretching
stretching.
today.
The intrinsic nature or dynamic nature of stretch is that those are happening at the same time. Remember the hands as
Mhm.
you're expanding the space, but you are, as you expand into the more living, the richer fun, the deeper love, the more spiritual yoga practice, you are feeling all those places that have not fund, that had not loved, that had not spiritually trusted. We can label it whatever we want. Flexibility in your muscles, for God's sakes. We want more flexibility. When we can become more present with there's a dynamic nature to it, that we really want to go in there in a way that we become very honoring of life, and that we expect that when we are really stretching, that we are going to feel, if you can take it less as a backlash,
Mhm.
right? Because it
That's right.
does, it absolutely will feel that way. And gosh, I've heard this, I've been in so many conversations of that same thing of, gosh, I felt so great. And now
That's
this
right.
thing is happening.
Right.
What if we went into expecting an aspect of that, because we know that part of the stretch is that we are illuminating our shadowier places that haven't let that light in to expand into that. And that in those places need love and honor, acceptance and attention, and that they're not opposing the stretch, they're part of the stretch.
I love that. That's actually like inviting me to do more stretching, not just physically, but let's just say it's physically. Because there's a part that I think, even for me, I love the yoga analogy, because there's that piece that says, go and physically stretch your body. You also have like, you feel the emotions, you can when you hold the yin yoga, it's to do more of a traumatic healing because you've held
Mm.
that pose, that stretch for so long, at least like
Yeah.
90 seconds or longer, that you've actually gone into the shaking part of the other side where
Amen.
those
Yeah.
traumatic or maybe even like just those darker places were. And it was like, no, I'm going to be with you. I'm just going to be with you here. And they're longer. And knowing that you're taking it with you and making it a part of the situation, it's not because of the situation. It's not like, "Oh gosh, I won't stretch that hard again because it sure did give me a sore hamstring." It's like, no, like, you got to actually see the hamstring that you haven't seen in quite a while, and it's like, "I love
Mm.
you, hamstring. Like, I'm gonna stretch you more," not having to make one the villain, like you said, and the other one the superhero or the
Yeah, right, because those places, if we were to personify them the way you just did, are those places that have protected us.
Mm,
Are those places that when we were too scared to speak up, when we were too scared to move forward, when we were maybe fending for our life in some way, it said, "I've got you, baby.
mhm,
I've got you. I'm holding you and I'm going to protect you. I'm going to shield you." And every time we feel frustrated, as in this person, right, that I was just saying with the fun, and we don't respect that frustration and we don't honor that that is just as valuable of a sacred awakening
mhm.
or message of wisdom as the nice feely parts. I mean, that's, we have tons of songs, around that in love, like love hurts. Yeah, yeah.
We can
I
all
think that's
agree with
and
that too. We're like, "Yeah, it
and
does,
we
but I'm gonna do
yeah,
it anyway."
right. Well, and that's
Still
the
worth
thing
doing.
with this other person this week, and she was just like, "I know," and I was like, "What's the worst thing? You're gonna break your fucking heart." And you know what? That is a beautiful thing to break and open and break and open and open. Where it's like, what are we waiting for? And I really honor, I say this knowing that I have had that same feeling and do where I'm just, the butterflies come in, the contraction. And I go a little bit crazy in those moments when I've been so illuminated and I'm really all the way up here and I'm expanded. And then I'm like, why am I not breathing?
Mhm,
And which actually takes me to something else about this that feels important is that in life, there's this dance, and people have expressed, taught this curriculum of thought in different ways. And one would be, that we love variety, that we want this nuance or novelty in life. We want to feel like we can experience new things, basically. And then there's this part that wants certainty. We want a routine. We want to make sure that we know some aspect of what we're doing day to day. And that both of these pieces of how we live, or these natural human desires, are super important, because when we're leaning too far one way or too far the other way, and this is what we share a lot right on here, but when we're
mhm,
leaning too far into stability, let's say, or into consistency or certainty, we really ultimately don't allow ourselves to grow. And if we're so stable in just biology or energy alone, that's death. If we don't ever move, we die.
mhm.
We've heard people say, if you don't use it, you lose it. There's
Yeah.
an aspect, if we're digging our heels in so strongly, we have more certainty in our life. And I think in this time in our history, we see a lot of that. We can't quite get out of our own way. We're not healing as powerfully as
Mhm,
we could because we're having too much certainty out of fear, and it's keeping us solid. And we're going, oh my gosh, we're worried about the next thing. So our thought process may be very much in the future of worry, and we're stagnant. Now on the and that's no bueno. That's no good. Now if we're always trying to stretch, we're just like stretch, we're going and not listening to what's happening, because we're not, in this case, if we're stretching too much and going too much into instability and too much into variety, that can create trauma because what's happening is we're not able to be present long enough in the moment to be still, to have any aspect of stability that says, here I am. I am an incarnation of God, of the universe, and we can go the other way. So what happens is life is the dance of this stability, variety, and of this certainty, stillness, and regularity.
Mhm.
And when we are leaning more on one way or the other, we can create a challenge in our life. Too much stagnancy, like I said, is a death. It could be the death, if it's not of yourself, the death of your dreams,
Yeah.
the
It's
death of
like
your
the
growth.
overstretch almost like where you tear a muscle. It's kinda like when you do push something so far to its limit.
Yeah, that would be the overstretch where I'm not comfortable of being still enough. So if I'm stretching too much, we're going to have trauma. I've seen this with the healing world, and when there's so much instability and maybe someone's really gotten perhaps addicted to this expanded transcendental experience, and they don't have enough of the certainty and regularity and consistency in their life, that's where they pull the muscle, right? They pull the muscle of their brain, they pull the muscle of their heart, they pull the muscle of the structure of their life. And I've seen that when there's too much of that, people will start making all of these choices, but they're not grounded in an aspect of embodiment. And therefore, it comes crashing down in some way. So, what this has to do with stretching is that when we can allow ourselves to embody and really honor that by nature of the stretch, there's an aspect of this instability, variety, expanded nature. And there's this part that's saying, hey, this is enough. There's a stability here, and that we can dance between that, that you're feeling that stretch of the expansion and you're
Mhm.
feeling that stretch of the parts that you've contracted too much. So I think it's a relief almost. And it's something that feels exciting to me to remember that, well, of course it happens. And it's not, sometimes, if I'm honest, I've felt this way. If I have a really big high with something, I go, oh, okay, you can wait for and this is sort of the contracted version. I'm just going to wait for the other shoe to drop. Well, there is something in that. And I think
Mm.
what happens is when we stretch too far one way, like I can feel when I get really excited, there's an aspect of me that's losing too much of the stability. And I need to just pause and take 3 slow, deep breaths.
Mm.
And instantly, it's like I'm now integrating the expansion of the stretch. Because we live in such a dichotomatic, I'm making up words again, world, we don't realize how sort of monochronistic we've gotten on one side of things. And if we're addicted to expansion, we sometimes have gotten too far away of really loving the shadow parts, which are just the parts that were protectors, allowed you to survive.
Yeah.
And when that happens and it goes too out of balance is when we find the injury, or we get too stuck and we stay stuck and we live an unlived life. I've seen this in the work that I do when the energy goes through the heart for the first time and people feel very expanded, and there's just tears are running down their face, and they're feeling not just feeling more love, they realize that they are love. And then they go out in their life, and suddenly it's like illuminating every part of their life that does not live in love.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's integrated ways to doing this because, again, just like what I was just mentioning, I do with myself, is I can feel this excitement. I can feel the hormones going. I can feel all of the energy. It's like, okay, I want to be with you. And I know that there's another part of you that I want to acknowledge, and that the value of that's important. So there's ways to integrate that, is my point.
I always appreciate these conversations because here I was on this topic relating stretch to my yoga practice, or lack thereof, here recently.
Also a confessional, just so you know.
Professional. Crystal's revealing. This is also shining light on the stretch of life, the moments that happen every single day, whether we are aware of them or not. I'm sure we have a stretch aspect every single day, every time we can get in the car and not venture into our road rage and decide to just turn the music up instead. It's probably a little stretching in there.
Is this another confessional?
Another confessional. And yet there was something that happened this past weekend that I had gone out with a friend, and I had planned to go out with one friend, and we did a nice little dinner and had a little drink, and then it was 9 something, and I was like, I'm gonna call it an evening. Then I had another friend pop up, and she's like, well, let's not call it an evening just yet. Let's keep going. And so we ended up going out and staying out even longer and having even more fun. Me going into my stretch of just letting loose. This felt great. We're like out past 2 o'clock in the morning, us moms, like just having all this fun. And the next day, I couldn't help but to feel the other side of that stretch going, what do you think you're doing up at 2 o'clock in the morning? Like, was that appropriate? Should you have been doing that? Like, there was just all these things that come tumbling in. And even though I was able to navigate it, it took me a little bit of time because every day something would pop up. I'm like, oh, is that what moms do? Should I have called? Is that appropriate? Like, whatever it was, I was just evaluating it. But having this conversation allows me to look back on that and say, you were just also in the stretch of that. Like, it didn't just go, oh, you stretched into the fun and now the stretch is over and you're feeling the aftermath of a stretch. It was like, no, you're actually still in the stretch. You're in this
Yes,
stretch that says
totally.
these places where you deny yourself fun, you feel like you have to, I don't know, live this role that society sets for you and just all these things, you're now in that part of the stretch. The whole thing is the stretch, and the integrating and the digesting and the bathing in all of that is beautiful too. And now that we're having this conversation, I feel we've now painted this through with more color. All the colors of
Yeah,
the
I mean,
rainbow are now in the stretch as they should be. And I'll be able to have that conversation with myself next time. I'll be able to share that when I can witness someone in a stretch and they're coming up and having the same kind of thing. It totally changes the game. This
yeah,
awareness of the things that were not as visible is a game changer.
yeah.
And I just can't be more grateful every single time. I'm almost surprised, but not surprised. I mean, confessional. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, I love that you love it, and I love that share. And for some reason, I'm thinking of a line that I've used with people, and it's you can't drive your car if you can't find your keys. And I know that doesn't seem like it has anything to do with what we're saying. The point is like
Is this your
illuminate.
confessional?
Yeah, that's right. I've lost my keys. Does anybody know where I put them? For God's sakes. Ah.
Ah,
Anyway, well, actually, that's an interesting thing because now I have a special hook because I used to, long time ago, I used to
mhm.
lose my keys and it would drive me crazy. Too much instability, too much like, I'm going to put my keys wherever the freak I want. And now it's like, you know what? I want to drive, so I'm going to put my
That's
keys
right.
right
I
here.
wanna know where they are, I wanna
Yep.
leave on time, all
The
the
point of saying this is that when we illuminate the space, when we stretch the space, all of a sudden we go, there are my keys.
oh my gosh, so true.
and and so what you said really parlays into an aspect, and it's something that you and I've already agreed that we're going to do, and that
Mhm.
has to do with our desires. And I'm specifically going to distinguish between desires and goals, mostly because goals, what I think of as goals is we're going to set something that we want and we're going to get it at this certain time. We're going to my goal is to start a business next year and I'm going to do these steps to get there. So when we desire something, it is coming up from deep inside. And generally speaking, I feel that, and this can be painful. This has been painful for me most certainly. And I have seen this especially with women, very where we don't even know what our desires are. Say, "Hey, what do you want? What do you desire?" And then the pain will come up because I'll use myself. I won't even know what my desire is. And why that's painful, because I know intrinsically that there are things that I desire that I haven't even shed the light on. And what I think and how this has to do with the stretch is that basically what I'm starting to do, and Crystal has jumped on board, is that I'm going to start a desire journal where I'm going to list 10 desires a day for 30 days. Now, I've done this before, and so I'm going to share some of my experiences. Is that sometimes it was just blank. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are my numbers. It's all pretty. I can write it down. And it's like la 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 la, like
Like, I desire to write a desire of
yeah.
Emily.
And right. And then the other thing is to be it's sneaky how goals will sneak
Mm.
into our desires. I'm not saying they cannot be related. What I'm saying is to purposely, if you want to join us, write down a desire as if you had no rules, as if you could stay out all night, not just till 2 in
Mm.
the morning. If you were a bad girl, if you were a bad boy, if you were like, what would you desire? Give yourself, whatever that is, the permission to write down anything you want, anything you truly desire. And sometimes my desires have been every time I pass a mirror, I'm going to look into my eyes and remind myself and tell myself, not even remind myself, I'm going to tell myself how amazing and beautiful and loving and sexy as hell I am. What do you want to experience more of? What is your desire? What do you want to feel more of? And allow yourself to go crazy, and there's no wrong desire. It can be something so big. Honestly, I desire to have $5 million. And some of you will go, well, I don't want to put that down because then I'm going to be disappointed. Well, here's the thing. Everything that we were just saying with stretch is there's always going to be another part of the stretch. And until we can include that as the sacred fabric of the stretch, we're really not going to completely stretch and really accumulate our growth and expansion as a human being. And this is why, because if we never let ourselves desire or get into relationship with desire itself, I recently heard someone say that the thing about desire is that desire is never satiated.
Mm.
I really want to pause on that, because if desire is not satiated, that's the very reason why we don't want to write our desires, because we don't want to be disappointed that it won't come true, whatever it
That's right.
is.
Or it seems impossible. So we're like, why even write it? It's never going to happen, which is
Right, exactly. And what I'm saying is this desire journal is not about the thing. It's about being in relationship with your desire.
that's
If
right.
you want $5 million, what is the desire in that? Why you want $5 million? So this is an exploration of self that goes deep down into the psyche, into the gut, into the soul, into the life of you, and says, what do you really desire? What do you want to come to life? What do you want to birth within inside of you? What do you want to create? What do you want to experience? And if you can be in relationship with desire and less about the goal, the outcome, then you are becoming more intimate with desire itself. Desire is not supposed to be satiated. Desire is supposed to wake up your life. It is
Mm.
supposed to bring you back into the creatrix that you are, into the creation of the expansion of you. And so why this has to do with stretch is because when you start writing down your stretches, I will guarantee 100%, if you really do this, that the icky parts will come up.
They're going to come up on the first one. I remember looking back doing this. I remember the amount of self-judgment and criticalness that I was like, you can't even write like a good top 10 desire list. What is wrong with you? I mean, it starts right away. So I
It does.
love the idea of the
Yep.
accountability, putting it out here, doing it with a partner, and just doing it for 30 days. Like, just start, even if like day one, like you said, is 10 blank desires. Okay, day two, here we go. I got one of
Or
10
you can just write, I suck
desires.
at desires. My
Yeah. Oh
desires
my
that I
gosh.
get better at desires.
Totally. Like,
And
just start doing it.
it's okay if the first 10 days are sucky desires. You're like, wow, I suck at
Mhm.
this. That is the hairball. That is the part that comes up that sheds the light on the parts that have prevented you from coming to
Yeah.
life, that have prevented you to sink into your desire. It's not about satiating. It's not about satiating the desire. It's about waking you up to all
Mm,
that you deserve to experience, to feel, to breathe in, to scintillate. And so expect that to come up, because that is the very thing that holds us back to actually expanding into our world in the first place.
yeah.
And I'm excited to do it again. We've both done it before, and the thing about doing this is that often we don't even uncover those judgments that you said, because we're not even allowing ourselves to desire. I have done that, and I know I still do. So this is my confessional. Right now, I'm not in partnership, and I desire partnership. I desire lovership. One of the things that I do with that is I will be very clear at all the things that I'm grateful for. I have a very beautiful, full of love life, with my family, with my dear sisters, with my friends, with my community, with my clients. And I am so grateful, and all those things are true. But what I do is I dim down putting a period at the end of a desire of saying, I want to experience deep, luscious, incredible love, and that I can put a period, that I can put it down on my desire list and feel what it feels like of the potential of not having that. Because again, it's not about, in this case, partnership. It's about saying, I want this thing to birth in me. And every time I go, here's the thing, I have a great life and it's beautiful. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, the universe is just going to do what it's going to do. It's all meant to be
That's right.
however it unfolds. And even though that's true in itself, I can use desire as a way of, it's all good. If it's this,
Mhm.
I did this with this podcast. We could just have Crystal and I listening to this podcast, or maybe we'll have a lot of people, but it's really okay. But even though that in itself is true, can I be with the part that feels pain around, I desire to have 1 million people listening to this? And why is that a desire? So there are ways that we can really block our desires, and that's why this exercise is so lovely. And it also teaches us how, and it will teach me yet again, how to feel into the edges of the stretch.
That's right.
And that's really what I wanted to say. And we're inviting you to come on board with our 30 days of desire, 10 desires a day, and let us know if you're doing that. So I just want to end this and saying, we're honoring the stretch in all of us. May you honor the stretch in all of the pieces that come up, the shadows that get illuminated. May you jump on the desire journal journey and see how that can be a doorway in to conditioning your body and your neurology into the real sacredness of stretch. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are grateful, and I desire for you to like our podcast.
That's right.
No,
Stretch it
give
out,
that
people.
5-star rating, people.
That's right. If it's not a 5, don't bother.
And with that, I'll say until next time.
Until next time.
And now, Trevor Hall with Blue Sky Mind.